that created this global panic that obviously had some pressures on Donald Trump. It's clear that the reporting that stated that America was the one that was pushing for this ceasefire is most likely real, right? Some might say it's propaganda. Oh, you're just doing resistance propaganda, but it's obvious. Away from it at the last moment, and there's obviously some details that they're not covering adequately on mainstream news. I'm going to pee real quick while this runs, and I'm going to give you some commentary on it. Let's go.
In just a few hours, the Pentagon will provide an update on Operation Epic Fury as President Trump reveals a ceasefire between Iran has now been reached.
The commander-in-chief posting in part, quote, "I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate."
The president says this marks a big day for world peace, revealing the next steps for the region. Quote, "The United States of America will be helping with the traffic buildup in the Strait of Hormuz. There will be lots of positive action. Big money will be made. Iran can start the reconstruction process. We'll be loading up with supplies of all kinds and just hanging around in order to make sure that everything goes well."
Here to break down the latest peace proposal is Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Lawrence, good morning. It was truly the 11th hour, down to the wire, when President Trump announced this ceasefire agreement shortly after the Iranians put out a statement matching the president's and then proceeded to launch missiles and drones at Gulf countries and U.S. ally Israel. Here's what it looked like in Tel Aviv after the ceasefire was announced.
So one of the funniest things about this instance was, of course, the fact that a lot of the pro-Israel spokespeople on the internet were instantly complaining and saying, what do you mean? This is supposed to be a dual ceasefire, which, for the record, a ceasefire means both parties agree to it regardless, right? Like a dual ceasefire is redundant. And yet they had to say it's a dual ceasefire because Israel usually never ceases to fire. So when they got a little taste of that medicine back, immediately they were complaining. There was obviously my favorite Israel propagandist, my favorite Hasbarist last night, who was saying, like, look what they're doing to us. You know, sirens over Tel Aviv again. He said, breaking, nonstop Iranian, Eyal Yacobi says, breaking, nonstop Iranian missiles raining down on Tel Aviv less than 2 hours into the ceasefire. Since the ceasefire began, Iran has attacked Israel, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Where is the outrage? I said, oh, you don't like it when one side doesn't cease its fire during a ceasefire. Interesting. Because in every single one of these circumstances, it's like you only get to violate these rules over and over again because you operate in this might makes right environment. And all of a sudden, if you have another adversary in the region that is mighty enough, when the shoe's on the other foot, you don't like it, okay? I don't know what the reasoning for why the Iranian missile strikes were while the ceasefire was, supposedly agreed upon. Having said that, Israel very clearly did not want the ceasefire to take place anyway. They were very frustrated. They were not cut in on this deal, as I talked to with Trita Parsi earlier. And they were losing their minds on the timeline. It turns out that they were not cut in on the fact that the ceasefire was even taking place at all. I assume that it's a byproduct of the Mosaic system that they have, which is decentralized. There's no central communications hub in the Iranian defenses, so these different hubs were still continuing to pummel because they didn't get the message that the ceasefire had been implemented. So Israel, on the other hand, this morning, started slamming Beirut and southern Lebanon, killing hundreds of people in what the Lebanese side said was the most intense bombing that they've withstood since the beginning of this last Operation Epic Fury.
What you just saw there was an Iranian ballistic missile with a cluster warhead, those bomblets raining down on Israel's second largest city of Tel Aviv. This came after the ceasefire was announced by President Trump, and an indication that it will take time to get this agreement in place. Now, since the overnight hours, the fire has stopped toward Israel but has continued toward Gulf countries. The agreement in part appears to be holding, but we're looking now at the details of this deal. The Wall Street Journal reports on Iran's proposed plan that includes 10 separate points. Some of them include the U.S. guaranteeing a non-aggression pact with Iran, continuing Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance that Iran can enrich uranium for its nuclear program, removal of all primary sanctions on Iran, removal of secondary sanctions, an end of all UN Security Council resolutions against Iran, an end to the IAEA's resolutions on Iran's nuclear program, compensation payment for Iran and its war damage, withdrawal of U.S. forces from the region, and a ceasefire on all fronts. Those are a number of points that are not going to be reached, and the next 2 weeks are going to be critical as negotiators try to hammer this out. Now, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted a statement on X overnight agreeing with the president about the ceasefire, saying Israel also supports the U.S. effort to ensure that Iran no longer poses a nuclear, missile, and terror threat to America, Israel, Iran's Arab neighbors, and the world. The 2-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon. We're also getting a look inside of Iran today, where pro-government demonstrators gathered and chanted in the streets of the Iranian capital here in Tehran. They chanted death to America, death to Israel. They were burning U.S. flags and chanting victory in the aftermath of this nearly 40-day war that erupted in the region with the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. So right now, the entire world looking at this 2 weeks to see if some of these details can be worked out for a ceasefire agreement, but it is a delicate moment.
And for the record, this could have been a total ceasefire hoax to forcibly lower the price of an oil barrel, which worked, for the record. It went from $114 approximately down to like 90. I don't know where it's at currently. But is that good enough for Donald Trump to advance and ensure that this ceasefire holds, which would require restraining Israel, as I've said, bringing Israel to heel? That is the primary focus of American foreign policy. It should have been the primary focus of American foreign policy since October 8th, 2023. And we've moved in the exact opposite direction. A lot of people at the State Department under Biden understood that this was a necessity, and some even quit their jobs publicly because Biden wouldn't do it. And now there are even people in the Trump administration that recognize that we have to restrain Israel. We have the power and capabilities of restraining Israel, but we're choosing not to. And any kind of leaning in the direction of Israel is going to have devastating consequences for the entire world, and we're seeing that unfold. We've been seeing that unfold for the past 39 days, and yet seemingly there's no restraint being demonstrated from, or no restraint being demanded even from the Trump side. That's where we're at. And considering the fact that it's clear that not only did America nor Israel actually achieve any of its strategic military objectives, and on top of that, created this global panic that obviously had some pressures on Donald Trump. It's clear that the reporting that stated that America was the one that was pushing for this ceasefire is most likely real, right? Some might say it's propaganda. Oh, you're just doing resistance propaganda. But it's obvious that there was one party that was no longer willing to engage in this war, and that was the United States of America. I truly do believe that Iran wanted to set up sufficient deterrence. And if America doesn't think that this sufficient military deterrence was established and thinks it can continue waging this war, upping the ante, targeting more civilian targets, killing more civilians in general, and trying to turn a country of 93 million people into Gaza in the sufficient time frame that is necessary, where they are not capable of destroying the global energy markets permanently, they're going to go back into it. They're going to go back into it. But there is the Financial Times reporting that I'm obviously leaning into that says U.S. directly pushed Pakistan to arrange a ceasefire deal while talking about escalation. So they were, on the timeline, they were posturing in this barbaric manner, but behind closed doors, they absolutely were begging for a deal. They were begging to stop the bleeding, right? It makes sense. It makes sense when you think about the war objectives that were not accomplished at all. And not only that, but also Donald Trump personally admitted that initially that they thought that the Iranian demands were quite reasonable, that there was the workings of a negotiation, right? There's the workings of a actual negotiation there. And the Iranian demands, the 10-point demands that they've made, have not changed since day one. So what changed? Well, what changed is the calculation, right? This doesn't mean that Iran has unlimited striking capabilities, because I have seen a lot of people, some of the resistance Twitter that constantly talks about the IRGC or Hamas or any number of different resistance fronts as though they are pawns in this game that they're playing on the internet in a way that's not dissimilar to how like the pro Ukraine, pro NATO Twitter talks about Ukrainians and how they have to consistently wage war. Resistance Twitter was mad. They're like, what are you doing? You need to blow up Israel further. Like, this is so stupid. And it's like, Iran doesn't have unlimited munitions. And the Iranian government's primary focus is still to maintain sovereignty, right? And ensure that their people are not being slaughtered. So they understand their limitations as well, which is, I think, the reason why they were fine. They thought that maybe they had established sufficient military deterrence. They had done enough economic damage that America would actually finally come to the table and treat them as a serious partner. Okay? Iran doesn't have unlimited munitions, and Iran doesn't have unlimited appetite for death and destruction. You have to understand that. They are thinking about this very clearly. They've demonstrated sufficient restraint in the past, and now they've demonstrated sufficient military deterrence. But they obviously interpret the battle conditions in a way that's a lot in a way that's much more strategic than random Twitter users. Okay. I don't think their capacity plays part in the specific war at all. No, there's a limit. As long as the war wages on, there's also a lot of economic damage that they're taking. Okay, their facilities are being destroyed. Their railways are being bombed by Israel, which is what happened yesterday. They don't want their power plants to fucking to be bombed into oblivion. That is not just tremendous economic damage, but that will cause a lot of deaths. Okay? So from their perspective, they've been able to show the world that they have the capability to force America to concede. Whichever, from this point on, as long as America abides by these conditions, then they're good. Now they can rebuild, right? That was the goal.